Tonebenders, a sound designers podcast. Here are your hosts, Timothy and Renee.
Welcome to Tonebenders. My name is Renee Coronado, and with me today, as always, it's Tim Muirhead. Hey, Tim.
Hey, Renee. How you doing?
I'm doing great. And today we have a very special guest. It is Bret Johns, straight back from Thailand with the Elephants in the Room library.
That library is so good.
It's this the whole reason for us coming together.
Yes.
Bret is a freelance sound designer. He was at Gazillion working on Marvel Heroes MMO for 6 years. He did Sunset Overdrive and Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes, 27 episodes of that. You can find him over at sonicshepherd.com and at facebook.com/sonicshepherd. Hey, Bret, how are you, man?
I'm doing well. It's great to be here.
So Marvel.
Yeah, Marvel. That's pretty awesome.
So Marvel, yeah. The path to Marvel was a twisted one, but it started out with knocking on doors when I was over at Sound Deluxe interning, and I knocked on the right door, and there was a guy there who was working on a side project. He was working on Planet Hulk. It was a straight-to-DVD. It's actually really a cool movie, but all I did for that was punches and slashes and gore and that type of thing. So, yeah, after that, I had a little bit of PTSD. But from there, the same people that did that, they asked me to do an episode of Marvel Earth's Mightiest Heroes for Disney XD. And I was really excited to get the opportunity because I was going to be doing, a lot more than just punches. I was basically going to be doing the entire episode. And I came back at him and I said, I've looked at the work that you've done before and I love the work that you've done. And I really want to match that quality. I think you guys do a fantastic job, but there's no way I'm going to be able to do it in the time frame that you want me to do it in. I either need more time or more people. And they came back with more time and more people. And about, I guess it was like a year later, when they were going to do season 2, they said they wanted me to be on the team for all of season 2 because out of all the freelancers that they had on the previous season, that I was the only one that gave them a realistic expectation of what I could do and come through. In the end. So sometimes it pays off to not try and say that you can do more than you can. In other words, I mean, that's a lesson learned there.
Yeah, you got to stick to your standards. People respect it when you speak straight to them.
Yeah, no, totally. And then from there, I was looking for work. I did a little thing, Scary Tales, just quickly after that. I was looking for work and I reached out to someone that I knew that worked previously at Sound Deluxe, and he was at Gazillion. I didn't know what they were working on, but I said, hey, do you know of any work? And what I didn't know at the time is that the CEO at the time of Gazillion, he wanted his new video game that hadn't been released yet to sound like Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes. So it was just coincidence and timing, but it worked out. Yeah, it was a great experience. I loved it. I think it's the best job that I've had, for sure. And Ellen Myers over there at Gazillion, I think she is the best audio lead I've ever worked for. So
how do you go from that situation to standing in the middle of a herd of elephants in Thailand?
That's a good question.
As you do.
I think this is probably pretty common. I'm with a lot of people in a lot of different jobs today, especially since we live in a time where we have so much opportunity. We have more opportunity than we've ever had before to do your own thing, right? To bring in streams of income, whether that be your online drop shipping business or your invention or your whatever that is. But within that umbrella, of course, you want to do things that you're going to enjoy. I knew that I wanted to create sound libraries. I knew that's something that I wanted to do at some point because I bought plenty of them and I really enjoyed what other people did. But at the same time, there were things that I thought maybe I would do a different way or think there were things that were missing. And I thought, okay, well, at some point, I have an idea. I have 3 or 4 libraries already pushed forward of what I want to do. Thinking about elephants as a library, as a precursor to my other libraries coming out, I thought this is something that is definitely missing. This is something that I've heard on, say, the server at Formosa or the server at Sound Deluxe, where those sounds were absolutely incredible. But in listening online, there was nothing there. And if there was something there, the quality was either they're old recordings, they're distorted, or there wasn't much variation. You could get like a grunt or you could get a roar, but then that's all you got. So if you're designing creatures, I mean, you want to have a variety because you want to convey different emotions for that creature, or you want to have you have to deliver variations for, like, let's say it's a victory, let's say it's attack, let's say it's, whatever that is. And so I knew that coming out with an elephant library, I really wanted to give something to people also who were independent sound designers. Like, they weren't at that big place. They didn't have access to that stuff. And now by me going out and doing something like that, they would have access to that stuff. So I didn't know, though, if people would necessarily be receptive to it. I know that when I was at Sound Deluxe, that's one of the first things they told me to listen to in the library were elephant sounds, because they're really cool sounds. But I didn't know that other people had been exposed to that. And then when I did the Kickstarter, it felt like the people who were backing it seemed to be, some pretty decent names in the business. So I knew I was on the right track. But when I hit that button, launch Kickstarter, I was like, well, I think it's a good idea. I mean, we'll see we'll see what happens,
Well, let's talk about that decision. How did you decide to go Kickstarter as opposed to self-financing it or funding it in some other way?
I had gone the year before. I had gone to Thailand to research where I'd record, make the connections that I needed to record. I mean, I try to make connections here as well. And I had funds together to go back a second time. And I had paid time off to go back a second time because I wanted to do that project while I was at Gazillion. But Gazillion abruptly closed down, and they let go of all of their employees, and they took all of their employees' PTO, their paid time off. So they sort of pulled the rug from under my plan. And I was like, well, I went out there, I spent a nice amount of money to make these connections and make this happen. And what can I do? Because it's been my experience with other things that if you don't take advantage of the connections that you have in a timely manner, those connections can dry up or disappear pretty quickly. Yep. So I was like, I have to get out there now. So someone had suggested a Kickstarter, and I didn't think it was necessarily a great idea, only because I was thinking, well, how many people actually get funded on a Kickstarter? Like, how does that work? I've never done it before.
I did one.
You have? Okay. Well, there you go. And then once
I've only done one.
What did you do? What was your thing?
I did the trolleys that are in Uptown over here in Dallas.
Oh, yeah. I did see that, actually. When I was going through, I think I modeled some of my stuff off of your Kickstarter. Like, I went through to see what other people had done to get funded on Kickstarter. So that's basically what I did. I think, and here's the thing about that. I think that, being in the sound industry or sound design, I think that your job is always changing, right? You have some mystery of something that they send at you, and you don't know how you're going to do it. You have no idea. And then you research it, you ask friends, you do whatever it is you can to make that thing happen, right? And it's just all puzzles and problem solving. And I was like, you know what? I've never done a Kickstarter, but other people have done it. I'll look at what other people have done. I'll ask around. I'll try and market it the best way I can. I'll do the research on marketing and branding and all of that. Luckily it worked out. But, I definitely needed a push. I needed help from other people to make it happen.
So can you back up a little bit to that first trip to Thailand? Why did you go in the first place? Is that just on your normal loop? When you're coming out of LA, you head to Thailand and then back out to Vegas?
No. Yes, so we go 21 hours out that way. Going out to Thailand, like in looking at where elephants were readily available, I mean, there are places in the United States where you can record elephants, but it's really expensive per day, and you're going to get one elephant at that place, or two elephants possibly. So that was prohibitively expensive, and I didn't think I would, I wanted to get a huge variety of elephants. And so I had a friend who is from Thailand. She grew up half in Thailand, the UK. And I talked to her a bit about it because she knows Thailand pretty well. And she said, oh, yeah, you can just, offer any guy some money and you can go record elephants there, anywhere, which didn't actually turn out to be the case. It's a little bit different than that because A, there are all of the equipment issues to deal with in terms of getting your stuff over there. And B, what you find out is you may have 500 elephants in an area, but there aren't that many that are going to make cool sounds. So you have to sift through a lot of elephants to find the right elephants to record. So, and it turned out my connections there had nothing to do with her. I ended up having a connection here. A guy who's a pretty well-known chef. He knew another well-known chef who was in Chiang Mai, who started a children's charity. One of his students had a cousin that went to school with this guy who owns an elephant sanctuary. He says, "Do you want to meet my friend?" And I was like, "Yeah, I want to meet your friend." And then one thing led to another, and we set it up.
So did you go to Thailand specifically for this project, or were you in Thailand and found out about this stuff while you were there?
No. I went there specifically for that project. But also, I figured if I'm going to be flying that far, I put a vacation into it as well. I would say I went for a month. So I went basically 3 weeks vacation and 1 week worth of research and, try and make connections. So, yeah.
Okay.
That's awesome. So you got the Kickstarter up and running. You hit go. Promotion, other kind of research. You had to make a promo video. You had to, go through the whole Kickstarter rigmarole. What was all of that like?
It went through a lot of iterations. Let's just say I fired the guy who was in the original Kickstarter video. It was, I did all the VO. You guys have seen the Kickstarter, and it basically ended up being a whiteboard, storyboard animation with the elephants and all of that. Originally, it was me in my living room right in here on my couch with a camera and a mic and wearing an elephant t-shirt that had glasses on it and me talking about the thing. And it really, everything I did, I was like, this is not good. People are not going to like that.
That's the hardest thing, isn't it?
The video?
Yes.
Seeing yourself on video.
Yeah, and hearing myself too. But yeah, and you're basically asking people for money, which is never a comfortable thing. But yeah, so everything that I read and researched said that, you're 3 times more likely to get funded if you have a good video. So then, that was the next step. I started looking on Fiverr for people who could do a whiteboard animation, and everyone was so expensive. It was like, $2,000, $3,000, $5,000. And so what I did is I ended up looking in the areas where there were Fiverr people that didn't have a lot of experience, and they need to get their numbers up so that they can get paid more money because they go up to a different tier. So I looked for people who I thought were really talented, but they were underlooked because they only had done like 7 jobs. And so I found a guy, he hadn't done that many, but everything that he did was super funny. Like I really loved all of his stuff. And like for the Kickstarter video, when he came out, when he did the thing where he's like talking about wild elephants and he had an elephant come out with 2 big pitchers of beer, I was like, this is the guy right here. Like, it was a funny video. He did a great job. So, but that was the thing also. Okay, so back to getting the Kickstarter video going. So it took a lot longer to put that together than I thought it would. And we were approaching the rainy season. So I basically, like normally you might have a 30-day Kickstarter. I did a 3-week Kickstarter, and I was tempted to do a 2-week Kickstarter. Like I really needed to get it fast before it started raining out there. So I was basically racing against the clock, and that guy, he kept pushing how long it would take him to get the video done. So it'd go forward a week, it would go forward a week, it'd go forward a week. And finally I was like, dude, this has to happen. Like it has to happen or I'm not going to make it. It's not going to work. So he got it out in the nick of time. We got that done. I got out there. And within 5 days of me being out there, we were boom, rainy season. Like it rained like every day or every other day. So I get on most of my recording in that first 5 or 6 days.
Wow.
Yeah, I got really lucky. And it's funny because the very first day that I was out there, I'm totally tired, bleary-eyed, up early, out in the jungle. It's picture, 100 and some degrees, 100% humidity. And what we recorded on that first day, I was so stoked I couldn't believe it. I was like, if this is the first day, this library is going to be absolutely fantastic.
You're like, I'm here for this much time. Look at the day one.
Yeah, day one, right? Yeah, and turns out day one was the best day. That was the best day. So I was glad that I started out strong because it sort of deteriorated from then. I'm not saying that I didn't have good elephants after that. It's just, it was really rare.
So before we get too far into Thailand, just to give a little bit of my own perspective, because I've done a Kickstarter as well, and full disclosure, both Tim and I backed the Kickstarter, having never met you before. The couple of things that I found in my own experience with regards to Kickstarters, specifically for sound design, is the video is really hard. One of the main things you have to do is qualify yourself in the Kickstarter as somebody that knows what the heck they're doing. And to some degree you can do that just with gear list, and with credits and all of that. But that's one of the main things like that I, as a backer, was looking at was, all right, who is this Bret guy? Does he know what's going on? Is he just going to Thailand, or is he actually going to get something good? And so I thought you did a really nice job of qualifying yourself as somebody that could get some good sounds once you got out there.
That's interesting that you say that, because I felt like that was my weakest point. I was like, it says that I did 6 years on Marvel Heroes MMO. Does anyone know what that is? I know a lot of the gaming world does, but I was like, I wasn't sure in the audio community, like, that it wasn't the last Marvel movie. It wasn't like the last Marvel motion picture. You're like, you're not that guy. Like, you're the guy who's working on this thing. And because someone on one of the social media, some group that I'm part of, said, hey, so I'm thinking about backing your Kickstarter campaign. What libraries have you released before? Is there something I can hear? And I said, no, this is my first library. I say, go big or go home. And he was okay with that because he ended up backing the library.
Yeah, man, you came with it. Well, what convinced me was the fact that you had a well-established plan. Like, you had a very good plan of action and a good equipment list for what you were going to do and how you were going to do it once you got out there. You didn't look like you were just flying by the seat of your pants. You looked like you really had thought about it and had structured yourself in a way that you were going to set yourself up to get something good. I also, as somebody that does enough recording myself, I know that animals specifically can be remarkably unpredictable. We just talked to Colin Hart on a recent episode, and he was out recording gators for years before he had enough material to get a library out of it. And it was a similar situation. They just don't make much noise until it's mating season. So he had to get out there and use some props to get them going.
Yeah, that was another thing that we were looking at as well. He had said that if I was lucky, that I would catch them still at the tail end of mating season, and I wanted that for the elephants. And I ended up getting 3 different sessions. I mean, 2 of them were better than the others, but that's where a lot of those low rumbles are from. It's from the mating. So,
yeah. And the other thing, just before we get off the Kickstarter, in my experience with Kickstarter, and you can tell me if it was this way for you, a lot of your backers show up right when you start, and then also right when it's about to end, and there's this lull in the middle.
Yeah.
And what I found is that if you have a really long Kickstarter, it doesn't really change that so much. If you have a shorter Kickstarter, you still get your spike at the beginning and your spike at the end when you're about to cross the threshold. Is that how it worked for you?
Yeah. In fact, I think it was something ridiculous. Like, in the first 48 hours, it was like 67% or something ridiculous like that. And I was like, oh, and I've got how long? I've got three weeks on this thing. Like, this is going to be amazing. Like, there's no problem. And then after that first 2/3, it was like tumbleweeds. Like, it would be like people would be like, hey, so what's going on with your Kickstarter? And I kept going. Yeah. So and then you read about what people are doing and like what the statistics mean. And for me, I thought, well, the reason these people get funded is because they don't stop pushing even during the lull. You got to keep promoting, keep putting it out there, keep getting the word out. Not because they got all the stuff in the beginning and then they just hung out for a while and then at the very end, everyone just magically came. So I was like, I got to keep pushing. So I was stressed out, to get it done.
It's a stressful thing.
Yeah. It's a stressful thing.
And the other calculation is you gotta try and raise enough money to actually do the job, and that includes paying Kickstarter, paying Amazon for the money transfer fees, and having enough for your actual contingencies and to actually get out there and execute the job. And sometimes that's a hard number to decide what it's going to end up being.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to shoot so high you don't get funded, but you also don't want to shoot so low you got to come too far out of pocket.
I think I did the latter. I think I shot a little too low. That was unfortunate. But I didn't want it to be this thing where people are like, well, why does it cost that much money? Which there's just, as I'm sure you know, there's a lot of stuff that comes up along the way that you didn't know. And they tell you for a Kickstarter, they tell you should have 25% contingency fee. of your stuff, right? To make sure that all those little things that you can take care of them. And then also, I wasn't working. So there was that. So I was dipping into any savings that I had to take care of it as well. And like little by little, I'm like, oh God, please let this happen. But yeah, and then once you get out there, which is a whole nother thing, is that you're in a third world country and you're trying to get something done. It ends up being that everyone's like, oh no, that's only 1,000 more baht. Oh no, that's another 1,500 baht. You're like, I was like knocking over 7-Elevens to, for extra elephant money. Like that's like, it's ridiculous.
Well, so let's talk about that. So you're funded, it's going to happen. What's your plan? What are the first steps you take? What is everything you have to get covered before you actually head out there?
Well, I mean, part of it was that, I didn't own a 633, sound device is 633. And I didn't have the 8060, which is the thing that I wanted to have for the wild elephants, if we were going to be doing the wild elephants, which didn't end up happening, by the way. That got rained out. So then I realized that the money would be better spent renting that stuff than trying to, buy gear. And then I wanted to be able to test it. I wanted to make sure that I could get out there and I could have enough variety of soft and really, really loud sounds to sort of know how to set my levels for this. And what I didn't realize until about probably, 4 or 5 days before I was ready to leave is that on the 633, if you're recording at 192, your limiters drop out. So no limiters. So you're flying without that, which is not helpful. But from the very beginning, the thing I was most paranoid about in recording out there was getting distorted recordings, because apparently that's the curse of recording elephants, is everyone gets distorted recordings. So they just underestimate how powerful they can be. It's extraordinary. Before I left, I was absolutely paranoid about that. So when we went out there, I felt like I was pretty well prepared. So not only did I have my gear, my settings set up, but if there was something that was going to be ridiculously loud and close, I had some adjustable pads, 15, 20, 25 dB. And when I said to them, I was like, is this going to be crazy? And they're like, yes, this is definitely the time. Pop those in there really quickly. Or if we started out and I just got so blasted, it was crazy, I'd be like, okay, we're going to pop these in right now. And then we went from there. And that's really something that I was proud of the recordings. Is that in delivering what I delivered for the library is a lot of people that were backers on the campaign, they had come out and said, hey, just do me a favor when you're out there. Don't compress anything. We don't need everything to be loud. I prefer natural recordings. And I really wanted that for those people. And it was so tempting because there are some great sounds in there. And I'd really recommend that people crank up the volume even between sounds because there's a lot of Easter eggs in there. Like if you look in between, I didn't want to hike everything up, so I highlighted every little thing. I thought it was more important to retain the integrity of what was out there and let people discover it than make every rumble loud or every nuanced groan or whatever loud. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how you guys feel about that. I really have no feedback on whether, I've had some great feedback on the library, but not on that specifically. Is that something that you guys experienced in the library that you were glad that I didn't crank everything up?
Yeah, I love that concept.
Okay, good.
I love it. And it is, and that's the way I do a lot of mine as well. I don't tend to run limiters at all. Because I try and stay far enough away. In my work specifically, at least, I will commonly add 20 or 30 dB a gain to something in order to make it cut in a mix. But I'd much rather do that in context and in post than to deal with anything that is compressed or limited in any way. I like to do a lot of limiting, but I like to do it in context and in post.
Yeah, and just like I was listening to you guys from your podcast with last night. What's his name? Colin Hart.
Colin Hart. The Tonestone.
Yeah, Colin Hart and Tonestone.
Tonestone.
That's something that I really appreciated about what they were talking about. When I heard them say that they tried to keep everything. They tried not to touch their recordings that much. Like that's something that I really respected, and I was glad to hear that because I really respect them. I was glad to hear that's
yeah, they're amazing.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I really took from them that I didn't really get to point out when I was talking to them, but I really, really loved the idea was that they listen to their stuff. They monitor through massive limiting just to go find weird stuff and get rid of it. But they don't actually print the limiting. They just listen to it in that type of context.
Is really
I thought
cool.
that was way cool.
That's really cool, actually. Yeah. I'm sure they find a lot of stuff that you wouldn't normally get to find if you weren't doing that out there, right? Yeah, it's a great search tool.
So what other kind of non-audio gear prep did you have to do? Insurance, vaccinations? What else do you have to do to go to Thailand?
Sure, you have to do your vaccinations. A good number of the vaccinations or the stuff that you need to do, I had done the year before, so I was still good on those. But insurance, I was insured through True Audio. But in terms of like a carnet, it's like a passport for your gear. So if you've got camera work or whatever, then they don't look at it. They just pass it on through because you have permission through their government or whatever to have that stuff. And there were people that told me that I should do that. I mean, people told me all sorts of stuff. People were like, "You should have a contact mic. And you should strap it to an elephant. You got to have you got to have the CO100. You got to have this. You got to have that." And I was like, "I'm going to be out there running and gunning and going crazy. Like I'm going to be trying to get." Like really with that microphone, with the 8050, like I love the detail, but I love the fullness of that mic as well. Yeah. And then the frequency response was like, I think it's like 30 hertz up to 50,000 or something like that. So I knew I'd get some really cool clarity and detail, but of course I knew if I had an 8020, like 8020 out there would pop down to 10 hertz. Like I know that they make sound that we can't hear, but I was like, I have to make a choice. I'm one guy shooting this thing and running around. Like I know that that the environment there isn't kind to having a lot of complicated gear. You just need to get the best recordings. The performance of these recordings is more important than getting every nuance that's, strapped from a contact mic to the elephant or whatever that is. Yeah. You know what I mean? But in going out there, back to what you were saying about permits, that was a very real concern. I didn't know. Thank God, like I was paying attention to George Vlad. I'm sure you guys. I think he's probably on the Slack there, right?
He's been on the podcast before, so.
Oh, he has. Okay, so he's done his prep, and I looked at his prep, the thing that he did for a sound effect. And one of the things, I mean, I love all the stuff that he writes. His photos, like all of his recordings, are amazing. But one of the things that he said, he's like, low profile is the best way to go. You're not going to pop out there with Pelican cases and expect things to just go smoothly. And if you were to get a carnet, then that draws attention to yourself because you've got your permits. Sure, you've got your permits, but then they're like, "Oh, what project are you working on? And what's your permits for this? And you want to give us, $2,000, or we can still take your equipment or whatever." Because it's a third world and everyone is holding their hand out. They all want money. And I not only got that advice from someone who was actually in Thailand at the time, but also from my friend who I told you about who lived out there. She's like, don't draw attention to yourself. Just keep everything low key. And then what I didn't discover until, again, maybe 4 days before is that, they have limitations, of course, on your carry-on luggage, right? Going to Southeast Asia. And I knew that they had limitations. I just thought that you got 15 kilograms for this and 10 kilograms for that. No, it's like 15 kilograms total. Like that's all you get for, your carry-on. And then you have however many kilograms for your checked-in luggage. But I knew that in case, and that's the other thing that, because I haven't recorded a library. I mean, I've recorded plenty of things, but I've never had to have backup recorder, backup mic, backup cables, backup wind protection, backup have copies of every element of the chain just in case anything goes wrong. And I have 149 people that are depending on me to get these recordings. I better make sure that I've got my stuff covered. So going out there, not discovering that till the last minute, the luggage that I had that I bought brand new that I thought was so cool that, I thought, I can roll that thing. I can, I have that. I ended up going straight back to my backpack that I had from the year before. I packed like one full set of everything I needed to record that I could just keep with me at all times, that I could keep my eyes on at all times. And then I had backups in my luggage. So no matter what happened to my luggage, it was okay. But at the same time, you don't want your luggage to get lost, and that way you have no backup. So then you're there, and then, sure, I made it, but if anything goes wrong, then again, I'm back to square one. So when I got there, I got to Hong Kong, the flight was late, and then so we missed our connecting flight. So they're basically like, it was already a 22-hour flight, and they said, okay, well, you're gonna have to wait here, then you're gonna have to go to Bangkok, and then if you go from Bangkok, you're gonna go to Chiang Mai, and so it's gonna be like basically a 32-hour flight. And I was just like, I hope my gear makes it there. Like, I hope the rest of it, so by the time I actually landed with all my gear, after everyone saying, what's this? I'm like, oh, those are batteries. What's it for? I'm like, well, they go in that battery charger. Hoping that would be okay. And it was. By the time I actually made it to Thailand with all my gear and everything was cool, and I was like, okay, I'm here. Now I have all the tools that I need, backups. Like, I was so grateful that it all worked out. But, without permits, without, anything, just a bit of luck and a bit of planning, and I was there.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was the prep.
So how close to the elephants would they let you get, both the people and the elephants?
I was right up on them. I was right up, it was like basically my microphone is as close or closer than yours. Like, it's just, I was right there. So and that's a weird thing too. It's, I know that I didn't always need that, but for those low rumbles, I really wanted to get up in there, because those really aren't that loud necessarily. And then, I try to include things in the library that I thought would be useful for other sound designers, especially for doing creatures or even doing magic, or even doing, superpowers, that type of thing. I feel like a lot of those, trunk sputters with blows are really useful for stuff like that. A lot of the short grunts, because they're recorded at 192, when you slow them down, they have that detail kind of a thing, but it's still like a full sound from that creature. I wasn't sure necessarily what everyone else was going to like. And for instance, being right up in the elephant's face for the chewing, there's some eating in there. There's elephant eating. Now, in my perspective of listening to that, and I made sure that I included in the metadata grass chirp, for instance, because when you hear that grass chirp if you turn that up and you slow it down, it sounds basically like a tree is falling, and then you get the whine of that chirp because it's slowed down. It sounds beautiful. I just felt like there were a lot of things that if you got right up in the elephant's face, and then there's the lip smack, all that stuff that I thought was really interesting that I wanted to include. And the only way to do that was to, get that proximity to get right up in there. But you guys were just worried about my safety.
What did your guides tell you? What did you expect before you actually stepped out there versus what was it actually like?
That's a great question. That's something I was meaning to address. So I think I had mentioned in the podcast, or not in the podcast, in the
Kickstarter?
Yeah, that I had all of these different calls. So there are the laryngeal calls, the trunk calls, imitated calls. And I had, so there's the rumbles, the roars, the cries, the grunts, the barks. I had sent out recordings that I had of those things, good recordings that I had, better than most people, have access to or have heard. But when I sent that stuff out, and I sent it up in folders, and I measured that against the lexicon that they use in elephantvoices.org, which is a elephant charity in Africa, which I'm giving 10% off of Sonic Shepherd. I'm giving 10% of all sales for this month to that organization. They're fantastic people. When I sent that stuff out to them, he said that he is listening to every one of those things. And yes, he can do that, and he can do this. And he's like, plus we have at least 5 different elephants that are going to be doing sounds that you have not heard before that are going to be, they're going to be great. So I was really excited. And then when I showed up and, I was out there and I said, okay, we're recording today. What's this elephant? He said, oh, he will make a sound. You will see. And I'd record and it would start and he'd go, and it's like this huge elephant. And you're like, okay, well, that wasn't on my list. Like, is this one of the 5 sounds that I'd never heard before that I'm really going to like? Or what's going on? So it was like the Wild Wild West. Like, I would like to say that he's like, okay, now we were going to be recording the laryngeal calls, and this elephant will be the cries that you asked for, and this one will be the grunts, and this one will be the barks. And it was all mapped out like that, but it was pretty much like, there's a new elephant, and we're going to record that, and then we're going to see what that's like. And then it would be like, when's the new elephant coming? 20 minutes, an hour and a half later. Is a new elephant almost here? 20 more minutes, 20 minutes. And then it'd be like 2 hours later.
Okay, bird coming.
There are times where my recording days is like 20 more minutes. I end up getting like an hour and a half worth of total recording, like for that day. And maybe not necessarily sounds that, for many reasons, didn't make it in because I didn't like the sounds that we're recording. Maybe the background noise was absolutely ridiculous. The other thing is, like one of the guides, he has a business to run. So we'd be recording and his phone would be go off. And like, I have recordings of his phone, like constantly going, somebody calling, down, down, down. Like that. Like that's constantly popping up. And I'm like, why? I'm like, you got to turn it off. And I would tell him to turn it off and he'd be like, okay. And then again, it would happen again. He would never turn that thing off. Like, and then he'd be like, hello. I was like, can you? He'd be like, okay. And then he'd walk off and all that recording would all get lost. So it was like, I had the best intentions of it being this well laid out, planned out thing that I had, popped through on Kickstarter. But so there were two sides of that. So on one side, I wanted the things that I wanted, and I told him that. But then on the other side of it, he delivered stuff that I couldn't have possibly known or hoped for, and I was really happy with. Like that elephant greeting that's on there, which is basically one elephant is in one position, and then 2 of his friends or her friends come up alongside them. They're like, okay, go. And they all come up together, and then it's just, you've heard it. You heard it on the thing. It's elephant cacophony or any of that. Yeah. Those roars and rumbles are extraordinary. It's like nothing I've ever heard before. Or the fact that he was able to wrangle 3 different mating sessions, which is absolutely fantastic. Or some of the different elephants that I loved on there, like Quincy was one of my favorites. Solano is one of my favorites. Kai is one of my favorites. By the way, I reached out to people that helped me with this project before I released it. And the people who not just backed the project, not just helped me financially, but also were so helpful and like were probably exhausted with all of my sending them stuff. What do you think of this? Do you think people like this? Do you think people like that? And I've been looking at this. Ultimately I ended up deciding to do what I decided to do. I was making the final decision, but I feel like I got a lot of help from a lot of people and I was really grateful for it. So I told a number of people that I was naming elephants after them, just to sort of immortalize them in the library. So when you see Kai as one of the elephants in the library, that's Kai Packen. So anyway, so not to get sidetracked and all that, but I just thought it was a nice
cool,
way to
kind of side story. I didn't realize that when I got the library where those names came from.
I just love the fact that they had names, because to me it's an easy way for me to go find specific things in the future as I'm looking for a specific elephant sound, and those things start kind of coming into my head. I know I can jump. I don't have to type elephant. I can type Quincy, and I can get a certain stack of sounds that are things that I already know what they are. It makes it easy for me to find them. I really enjoyed that.
You did a similar thing with your trolley library, Renee.
Yeah. I didn't name the trolleys. They named them, but I just wrote the names in, yeah.
Yeah, I mean the metadata search.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also thought it would be helpful, like if there's an elephant that does roars, that's pretty much it. It does roars. Or if there's an elephant that does rumbles, you get rumbles. You might get one roar out of that elephant that it just happened to be that way, or a trumpet. But I thought it was helpful also when you break things out to cries. or growls or rumbles. That if an elephant is making different sounds, because there are elephants that cross across those, it's cool that you can go back and get creature-specific or elephant-specific stuff. If you're working on a creature, you know that those sounds came from that specific creature, and it gives you all the more confidence that the validity of what you're putting together, not only could it come from the same creature, but it actually did, right?
Yeah, it's way cool. Did you ever feel unsafe? Did you feel like your safety was good throughout that whole process?
Yeah, I mean, every once in a while, especially like during that elephant greeting, like they're just like in a frenzy and they're going crazy, and like you don't know, like they'll pop in, and like I started to get a feel for it, and I would hop back because there'll be a couple of things. So it could be even during the mating, like there's mating going on, so they're doing their thing, and somehow if like you're interrupting them, if you're like in their space and like they're like, get that fuzzy mouse out of my face, like you don't know what they're gonna do, if they can slam you or what's happening, like what their mood is. And then again with the elephant greeting, like they'd be in with each other and all of a sudden they'd flip back and come charging at me, and at first they were like, okay, get back, and because I was so caught up in what I was doing.
Are you on foot?
Yeah, I'm on foot.
You're not in like a truck or something?
No, I'm right in front of them. Like I'm right there. But at first I was like, I kind of oblivious, and they were like, get back. But then I got a feel for like when I felt an elephant was coming at me, that I would drop back and I was able to get, away. As long as their mahouts are around, and a mahout can come. If there's a mahout that can come in between me and the elephant, they're not going to mess with the mahout because that's their guy. So I just had to be aware of that. And then there was a time I was kind of bummed out that I wasn't able to get the wild elephant sound. So that was rained out. And I wanted to do something for the backers to help supplement that. Because I said, I want to give you guys stuff that isn't available to the public. So I talked to Paul Verostek, and I was saying, I want to get tigers, like, because that might be fun. But at the same time, I really don't like that the tigers are drugged up here, and I kind of don't want to go record tigers that are drugged up because I just don't think it's cool.
You want to be on foot, inches away from a tiger with your mic, right? That's what you're looking for.
Just like with the
non-drugged up tigers, 1 foot away.
Yes, and I don't want them drugged up. I want it to be a challenge. So yeah, I didn't like what that was about. And so I said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and see if I can get some backgrounds out there. And I went out to this jungle where I know that there are loads of poisonous snakes. There are pumas and panthers. And I didn't have a guide. I had a taxi driver. And it was not pretty. I'm from Los Angeles. So it's not like I'm like Mr. Indiana Jones. Like I think I was cursing the entire time and getting wet and like, what's that vine? I'll bet that's poison ivy. Like the guy was laughing because he was like, dude, man up. Like it's not like whatever. But I got out there in the middle of the jungle, set up my stuff. And when I got to a place that I thought was really cool and I was liking what was happening, it was away from everything. And about an hour and a half later, the guy came back and he's like, oh, did you notice the snake that's right next to you? And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, there's no snake. He's like, yeah, right there. And I looked down, and it was a pit viper. It was a green pit viper that was just hanging there right next to me the entire time. I had no idea. So, but then I was, packing up at that point. It was okay.
Yeah,
Got lucky. Like maybe he just wasn't. Yeah. So yeah, that was the only thing. Just the snakes and possible, other stuff out there, and then the elephant stuff. And then there's always, they're really big creatures. So you want to make sure that as they're stomping around that you don't get stepped on. I did get stepped on by a baby elephant, which really wasn't so bad. He was intentionally trying to step on me. So that's a whole different thing. Like,
how cute.
This guy, I might have spent 5 hours waiting for him to make a sound or even come out from his mom. Like he was like, no, I'm hanging out with mom. Finally, when he came out, he decided he wanted to have some fun. So he was like pushing up against me, trying to trip me, trying to step on my foot. He was like pulling out my cords with his trunk. And I didn't end up getting any recordings of him until other than like little sniffs and stuff, like he was sniffing the mic, until at one point his mom pulled away or something, and he wasn't able to get the milk that he wanted, and then he started crying like crazy. And that's the cries that you hear Patsy crying. It's because he wants his milk.
I would be terrified of Mama protecting the baby if the baby's coming and playing with me.
Yeah, there's one of the sounds in there is Mama Rumble. You can hear the difference between the Mama Rumble, where she's mad, she's like, you better stay away, you're going to get it. And the ones that are like, this is nice, we're mating rumbles from the other stuff. It has a whole different feel.
So you were saying that you wanted to get back to the idea of if they were trained elephants or not.
Oh, yeah. So elephants and the Northeast Thai people, they're such a part of their culture. So for years and years and years, like they used them for wars. They would go fight on the backs of elephants, and elephants would tear things up or whatever. So they have this huge history and culture, elephant culture. Like the white elephants that are born out there, those all go straight to the king. No one's allowed to view the white elephants except for you go to special viewings of the white elephants. And again, those belong to the king. And those elephants were trained before fighting. And then after that, when we started moving in to modern times for fun and entertaining people, elephant tourism, all of that. And then there's the people on the other side of in the hills who are the Karen people. And those people have mostly trained their elephants for years and years and years for logging. And so it's a different thing. It's interesting because, although there is elephant tourism that exists on the Karen side of things, it feels like they have a whole different ethos about the way they treat their elephants. Basically, they would say, hey, elephant, we need you to do this work. But then after you do this work, just go hang out, do whatever you want to do, because you're just cool. Like, you're cool, we're cool. Like, you got your life, you do some work, you do your work day, I do my work day, and it's all done, right? So I know it sounds weird, but like, I honestly felt like the elephants from over there were happier. Like, they're just more chill, like they're more gentle, they're cool. And then the ones that are trained for all the tricks, like, I feel like they're stressed out.
Yeah.
If people are going to a place where elephants bow and do tricks, that's a whole different ballgame. Like, that's something I would really discourage people to do. I really don't think people should be riding elephants. I don't think they should be going to shows. I don't think they should be going to any like big shows that even elephants are a featured part of. I know that the trained elephants that I worked with on this library benefited from what was going on there. But I feel like this trip, as opposed to the previous trip, I got to see a lot more than I did on the previous trip. And I don't know, I'm not into it. And which is one of the reasons why when I put this together, put my website together, that I wanted to give 10% to the charity in Africa where there is no elephant tourism whatsoever. Basically, if you want to, at this place, if you want to see elephant, you go out on the Jeep, you check it out. That's cool. There's an elephant and the babies. They're doing their thing. And then that's it. You don't need to ride them. You don't need to go pet them. You don't need to do any of that.
Yeah.
What's the name of the charity?
It's called elephantvoices.org.
Cool. We'll put a link for that on our site too.
What an amazing adventure. That's the way to launch a library, is just go to Thailand and hit it with the splash, man. That was just the idea of an elephant library coming out. I was immediately pretty much going to be on board. I'm so excited that you did it. I think it's the coolest thing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm honestly super grateful that it worked out. Like when I was there, I had 3 backup hard drives and I had my laptop. So I had a copy on my laptop. I had 3 different copies on different laptops, and I had 2 cloud. I had Dropbox and I had iCloud. Like, I had libraries everywhere. So once I was finished recording, and I knew I was finished, that was done, I got the biggest smile on my face. I was just like, I can't believe that it actually happened.
Yeah. And you'll have that with you for the rest of your life. It's way cool. I'm jealous.
Well, thanks for taking the time to talk to us today. We really appreciate it.
Sure.
And we'll have a link up on our site for where people can go find your library as well as that charity.
Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you letting me tell my story and all the ridiculous ups and downs of the process. And I look forward to popping on next time when I have the next library ready.
Yeah. Stay safe on the next one, okay? Because standing next to snakes and elephants is dangerous.
I promise I will.
Thanks to everyone who listens and participates in the show. Thanks to Bret Johns for jumping on with us. Thanks to Stacey DePass for letting us bend and twist her voice on our bumpers. Also, thanks to Sebastian Dressel for some pretty amazing help on this episode. There's a link to his website on our show notes. You can follow the show at The Tonebenders and go to tonebenderspodcast.com to leave a comment. You can support the podcast by going to tonebenderspodcast.com/Amazon or tonebenderspodcast.com/BH. Also, go to sonicshepherd.com and pick up the Elephants Library. If you don't own it yet, go get it because it's awesome. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you all next time.
Thanks for listening to Tonebenders. You can find us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Stitcher. If you listen on iTunes or Stitcher, please write us a review while you're there. To support the show, go to tonebenderspodcast.com and click through our Amazon link or leave us a tip. You can also download and listen to our entire show archive there and leave a comment on our site or on SoundCloud. Keep up to date by following at The Tonebenders on Twitter or find Tonebenders Podcast on Facebook and YouTube. Email us with your questions and ideas at info@tonebenderspodcast.com.